Hey guys, you're watching Let's Talk About Prepping. I'm Tyler, your host, and before we get started, I just want to say that if you're under the age of 13, this video is not for you. Now in this video, I want to talk about why both that statement and the need for any prepper channel to leave the platform because of this COPPA issue is unnecessary. Now the reason that both of those are unnecessary is because it doesn't really matter if you say the video isn't for people who are under 13. If they're there, you've already failed. The reason is that this isn't about content that's okay for kids, like guns or cussing or anything like that. Technically, you should already be age restricting your content if someone under the age of 13 shouldn't see it. What this has to do is with the fact that YouTube collects cookies, that's just the normal data that websites collect and store on a personal computer, to let that website know that that person's been there before, what they looked at, and maybe who they are. So this is the collection of personal information on a person who is contacting a website. Now, COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, which is a federal law, is made to keep websites from collecting that information about children. Now, the problem here is that YouTube has been sued for violating this. And they were successfully sued. They paid a very large fine in over $100 million. But the problem here, and this is sort of what I want to get at, because a lot of channels seem to have misplaced or misdirected anger at YouTube. This is not a YouTube regulation directly, but they are still at fault here. YouTube is not levying this against their creators, but they have passed the buck on to creators because what they've said is they don't want to stop collecting personal information on basically all of their users, and they don't want to accept the burden of making sure that any of their users who are under 13 can't have their information collected. They'd still like to be able to do that. What they want to do is pass the burden on to the creators to ensure that if their content might even remotely appeal to someone who's under 13, their content can't have the personal information of its viewers collected. Now, in standard federal form, this passes the buck on to law-abiding regular people who are doing nothing wrong, and the burden of proof onto them rather than onto the user who might be violating what they should be doing. If your child is under 13, you should be paying attention to their internet use and ensuring that their account is properly restricted to the age of someone who's under the age of 13. It should not be on the burden of everybody else in the world to ensure that their content or their world is bubble wrapped in case you let your 13-year-old or younger person get into it. So the problem here is not that YouTube is trying to regulate us even more or trying to find ways to come at us, especially when I say us, meaning prepper, homesteaders, or sustainable living channels. This is actually the FTC taking a very heavy-handed approach in trying, I feel, to enforce the competition to their regular customers. That is to say, network television. YouTube is one of the greatest threats to network television, and one of their greatest customer bases, children and cartoons. Most of those children are watching their content on places like YouTube now, and the networks know it. And the taxes that are levied from those networks are basically what keep multiple federal agencies alive. These agencies, as I feel is the case in other regulatory scrambles that are going on, like with the nicotine, vapor, tobacco industry, these agencies are scrambling to find ways to essentially reinforce the industries that they regulate so that they can continue the paradigm that's already been going on. So this is, to me, not so much a matter of YouTube coming at channels, but a matter of YouTube trying to pass the buck onto their channel and content creators, which are the lifeblood of the platform, rather than doing what's necessary to enforce the existing regulatory laws by essentially taking the hit themselves and not providing personal information services to their third-party customers, rather than forcing us to make sure that everything that we produce that could potentially be appealing to someone who shouldn't have their information collected is well fenced off, so that YouTube doesn't have to do that fencing for us. Essentially, what I'm trying to get at here is I don't want prepping channels to just DePlatform, because what this comes down to at the end of the day is a federal issue. This can be applied to any website and any platform, and if any other platform becomes a viable alternative to YouTube, then the FTC is going to pay attention to that as well, because that will become a threat to the revenue of the industries that they regulate. So I hope that channels will not leave the platform, but pay attention to the fine intricacies of these rules and find ways to avoid having them apply to them. In fact, most prepping channels don't really fall under the statute of this, because unless you have children or a lot of children's content on your channel, it's unlikely that they could find any way to say that your channel is appealing to people under the age of 13. So mostly keep talking about serious stuff that kids could have no interest in, and you should be fine. I, for one, will be removing my videos that have things like the owl flashlight or Minecraft in them, because those could conceivably be related to children's content. Otherwise, most of the things I talked about here are of no appeal to children, and so I feel like I'll be fine. Anyways, I hope I don't get fined. I hope no one here gets fined, but I think we should be okay. And I hope that we don't need to freak out too much about this one. Hope you're all doing well out there. Everybody stay safe.